Joe, and I don't have to tell you, relationships are critical in Washington. But how do you A, find out who the key players are, and B, figure out how to reach out to them? Well, I want to tell you about Leadership Connect. It's been an absolute lifesaver for us as we expand our operations and outreach here at Washington Tech. Leadership Connect, it's the digital service used by top federal contractors and government affairs leaders to contact decision makers and develop those strategic relationships. Visit leadershipconnect.io and join the community. I love it, and I'm 100% sure you will too. That's leadershipconnect.io. Try it now.
The majority of new business owners in the last decade have been women, but if you sub-segment that further, it's Black women. And they did not have the ability to give their workers 401k subsidies or the ability to even invest.
Welcome to the Washington Tech Policy Podcast.
The latest tech law and policy news and brightest tech law and policy experts wherever you are.
So you can stay informed, on the move, in less time.
From Washington, D.C., it's the Washington Tech Policy Podcast.
With Joe Miller.
Joe Miller.
Now it's serious. Restrictions on travel, canceling major signature events. Tech giants are responding to the coronavirus. How effective will that response be? The NYPD pledges to remove DNA profiles of innocents from its database, and Bärí Williams is my guest. Hey everybody, tech giants are responding to coronavirus fears as Amazon reported that an employee contracted the illness. Facebook has canceled its annual participation in South by Southwest. The social media giant also pledged to give the World Health Organization as many free ads as needed to combat the virus. And Google has canceled its annual I/O Developer Conference, which was scheduled for May 12th and May 14th. Google has also halted international travel for employees. The New York City Police Department has said that it will remove DNA profiles of individuals who haven't been convicted of any crimes. The New York Times reports that some 82,000 DNA profiles in the NYPD's database belong to non-criminals. NYPD had detained and collected DNA evidence from kids as young as 12. The Times reports that officers once offered a 12-year-old a soda during questioning, then collected the boy's DNA from the straw he was drinking from. Many other individuals who were merely questioned, who weren't convicted, or in many cases not even arrested, also had their DNA collected. The database will be purged in the coming weeks, and the NYPD will continue to collect DNA from children only in cases involving felonies, sex crimes, gun charges, and hate crimes. Raja Krishnamurthy, the chairman of the House Subcommittee on Economic and Consumer Policy, wrote Amazon VP of Public Policy Brian Huseman requesting extensive information regarding its home security subsidiary Ring's partnerships with law enforcement to surveil communities with Ring's footage. Back in August, Ring began disclosing the police departments it's been working with, which as of today includes some 967 police departments nationwide. In the D.C. area, participating police departments include Tacoma Park, Bladensburg, Seat Pleasant, Prince George's in Maryland, and in Virginia, Alexandria's police department is working with Ring. A San Diego judge has found that Instacart cannot misclassify workers as independent contractors. In granting a preliminary injunction against Instacart, the judge ruled to enforce the new AB 5 law, which seeks to ensure that gig workers are classified as employees in order to access benefits and have the right to form a union. NBC News has more. Finally, The Hill reports the Democrats are split on what to do about reauthorizing the USA Freedom Act, the cybersecurity bill put in place following Edward Snowden's revelation that the National Security Agency was storing millions of Americans' phone numbers. Adam Schiff and Gerald Nadler are spearheading efforts to reauthorize the bill, while more liberal Democrats, including Zoe Lofgren, are seeking more privacy protections. Many of Schiff's allies during the impeachment hearing are now opposing his efforts to reauthorize the cyber bill, and interestingly, the White House has also weighed in, saying the president, including Attorney General Barr, wants the full bill reauthorized without changes. The disputed changes involve the extent to which there should be more transparency around how the FISA court operates with regard to surveillance. And you can find links to all of these stories in the show notes. Stay with us. today is Bärí Williams, an attorney and startup advisor. Previously served as vice president of legal policy and business affairs at All Turtles, an artificial intelligence studio. Her primary practice includes emerging technology transactions, privacy and data protection, and terms of service. She's the former head of business operations management for North America at StubHub, where she was responsible for business planning and operations to manage and oversee technical, internal, and external metrics, product innovation and partnerships, and drive profit and loss results across the company. Prior to StubHub, Bärí was a senior commercial attorney at Facebook. Please welcome Bärí Williams.
Let me go grab my charger really quick.
Okay, yeah, take your time.
I want to make sure that you don't cut off. And my this is looking, what is this, 25? Yeah, that's not good. Let me go get it. All right. Yeah.
So tell us about Human Interest and your role there.
Super fantastic, low cost 401k provider for small and medium businesses. One of the reasons why I was drawn to it and was interested is I have a lot of friends who are Black women entrepreneurs. And they did not have the ability to give their workers 401k subsidies or the ability to even invest. And that's what Human Interest is trying to solve for. And if you look at the statistics, the majority of new business owners in the last decade have been women. But if you sub-segment that further, it's Black women in particular. And so for me, that is a cause close to my heart. And so heading legal there means that I handle the policies and procedures and what happens there legally in terms of privacy and how do you set this up? How do you make sure things are clear and concise? And for me, it's making sure things are, as easy to read and to sign up for as possible.
And so what are some of those disparities that you're seeing when it comes to how people of color are saving for retirement?
We don't. I mean,
Yeah.
That's the long and short of it is like, we don't. And it sucks. I don't know another way to say that, but it sucks. And there's even been further demonstrations via studies that show that not only is it that we aren't saving for retirement, but when you have Black entrepreneurs and they're trying to raise funds, whether it's with VCs or it's with angel investors or anyone else, the way that we present it, it comes off as if we need this funding in order to pay our mortgage next month. Mm-hmm. Which is horrible because that's not what you want to exhibit to an investor, right? You don't want to show any signs of desperation or any signs of financial hardship to an investor because it's going to make them less likely to actually invest. And with that, that's going to make it harder for you to set up any type of employee savings account for your employees because they're not going to feel secure that the company is going to last. And so for me, one of the interesting things there is that I'm the only woman of color on the leadership team at Human Interest. And so there is another woman and she's fantastic, but there isn't anybody else of color and there definitely isn't a woman of color. And coming from the perspective that I have is very different. And so I can look at this and give you anecdotal references from multiple Black women, Latinx women who are friends of mine who have done this and say this is what they're dealing with and these are the trials and tribulations they faced. How do we actively talk to this market? Because this is the most increasing market. And so that's actually who you want to target if you want to sell this product. And what's the proper way to do so?
And what do you say about studies that say, like a Boston College study that says that retirement gap is smaller because they still say minorities, trying to get people to say people of color, but minorities have a lower pre-retirement standard of living to maintain?
I don't doubt that that's true. I mean, to a certain extent, yes, that's probably true, right? And the reason why I say that that's probably true is you understand that we know how to make $1 out of 15 cents.
Yeah.
So if I know how to make $1 out of 15 cents, yes, my retirement standard of living is going to be lower because I know how to stretch $1 further than somebody else would. That doesn't mean that I want to, and it doesn't mean that I should, but it means that I know how if I have to, if need be. So the difference is that yes, the standard of living may be different, but that's because that was imposed upon us, not because that's something that we chose. And so if we choose to do something different and we have the options and the ability to do so, then we will. There's so many moving pieces and parts that I think what is imperative and fantastic about this and the beauty of it, at least for me, is like to see the ingenuity that our community has to be able to make $1 out of 15 cents and to be able to say, okay, I don't have X, but I have Y, and I'm going to figure out how to make it into Z.
Yeah.
And you don't necessarily want to do that, but it's the ability to know how, if you have to, which is actually the skill. And everybody doesn't have that. You know, our ability to observe X, know that we need Y, and somehow turn it into Z. That is a skill everybody doesn't have. That is a skill that I find is imperative and life-saving in our community. And we have it in spades. No pun intended, because I can't play spades. But people have it in spades.
What about bid whist?
No, I can't. My mom can. And the funny part is, like, I grew up watching people have card parties and do all this, and I can't do it.
We didn't even play it in New York. It was bottle caps, stuff like that.
Oh.
But the interesting thing is thinking about retirement and thinking about these wage disparities when people are still at work, and then connecting that to the healthcare outcomes. Because if you can't afford quality nutrients and quality foods, then your life expectancy declines exponentially in a lot of ways. And so that's why, like you mentioned before, there are a lot of moving parts, and it's important to think holistically about these things. Other demographics can think of specifics, right? But I think for us, it's important to see kind of the
for us,
symphony.
They're all interconnected.
Yeah.
It isn't you can parse one from the other. And the funny part about that is I was having a conversation with a girlfriend like a month ago, and we were joking. And she was like, oh, ha, the way my 401k is set up, I don't need to have life expectancy that long. And it was funny, but then I thought about it and I was like, yeah, like, you're not wrong. Like, if you have, she was also a lawyer. So it's like, if you spent $200,000 in debt to go to law school, and let's say she pays it off in the next 5 years or so. And if you do that, and she has a condo, so now you're paying off the rest of your condo for the next 10 years or so. And then you are trying to figure out, do you want to take vacations? You're saving, I'm fine with dying by 75 because I don't have enough money to live to 95.
Right.
And that sucks, but it's the truth.
What are some of the trends you're seeing, Bärí, when it comes to small businesses and people of color?
What's interesting, and someone brought this up, actually was I want to say it might have been an observation I saw from someone who was not Black American. I think they might have been Nigerian or Ghanaian, but they were saying that it's interesting to note that it seems a lot of the Black tech companies are focused on being Black. And I was like, what does that mean? And the answer to that was, well, you have noir B&B, where it's like, okay, you can't discriminate against me because I'm Black and I'm trying to rent this place. And Blavity and just other little things where the core of it or the crux of the product is starts from a place of you being Black. And I thought, that's interesting. I had never considered that. And the way that I threw that back at them was like, well, why do you think that is? And they're like, oh, well, I mean, maybe they're not comfortable with these services. Like, no, that might be part of it, but not all of it. The majority of it might be, I'm not receiving the type of services I would receive if I were getting it from someone who understood me and already didn't look at me as a credit risk or a flight risk or whatever else. And I thought that was a very interesting observation. So you see a lot of companies who are dealing with what is the business of being Black and how do you solve for that or work around it, which is a very interesting notion to me. I don't want to solve around it and I don't want to work around it and I don't want to get, it is what it is. But I'm also not going to knock that. So there's that aspect. And then it's also understanding how do we appropriately cultivate and curate and find funding for businesses that are started by Black and brown funders or founders rather, in particular, because they are not getting their due. And a lot of these companies and a lot of this work is really instrumental and would be incredibly impactful. But if they don't have the money in order to push the product and keep it going, it won't happen. And I say this as somebody who grew up, with a single mom who was a public school teacher. So my mom, I think the entire time my mom raised me, I don't think she made more than $50,000. And that's in Oakland, California, which is not an easy place to live when you don't have a lot of money. And she still managed to do that, budget how to figure out for me to go to a all-girls Catholic high school that she had to pay for. And she still would bring kids home and buy them school supplies and throw them birthday parties and give them Christmas gifts. Like, as far as I'm concerned, my mom's a saint. And so I don't want to hear anything. She thought we were crazy to apply to private schools, but we did because in Oakland for the public school system, you have to register for a lottery, like literally a lottery, to see if your kid gets in a certain school. And our son didn't. And so I was happy that we had applied to these schools because it was like, well, we needed a backup. Otherwise, he would have been in a school that literally was a 2 out of 10. And my son is many things. He's very smart and resilient is one of them. But putting you in a school that is literally rated a 2 out of 10, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night doing that. And so if I have to, make it clap in order for you to go to private school, that's what I'm going to do.
She said, make it clap. Anyway, you have a new book out, so we're going to take a quick break and come back.
That's helping me not make it clap. Yes. We're
gonna hear about that in just a sec. Everybody, stay with us. So you wrote your first book recently.
Yes, I did.
Tell us about it. Tell what I saw it on Amazon. It's not available yet. I haven't had a chance to read it. I can't ask you specific questions about it.
I'm gonna send it to you and then make you force you to do an Amazon review. But it is about diversity in the workplace and how to navigate it, particularly as being a diverse person. And the way that we define diverse in the book is split into multiple categories. So it's age, it's ability, it's race, gender expression, sexuality, culture, religion. And I can say out of the 25 interviews I did in that book, only 2 people fit in one category. The other 23 fit in at least 2, sometimes 3, and sometimes more. So I remember when I called my editor and I was like, look, I've done 5 interviews. Only one of these people fits into one category. The other 4 fit into multiple, and you're going to have to figure out where you want to put them. But that's the beauty of it to me. It's like, that's life, right? Like, everybody's intersectional to some extent. And you just have to figure out how to navigate it and how to make it work. And it's everything from, the most fantastic interview, I think that was actually my favorite. And if anybody's on Twitter, please follow her because she's fantastic. But it's Charlotte Clymer. And she is trans, lesbian, a veteran from Texas and Christian. In her interview, I was just like, oh man, this is wild and also really awesome. And I had someone else who was a coder, and he came to coding because he was bi and a sommelier and had ADHD, but was also an alcoholic. And it's like, okay, you can't do that job and have this condition. And just talking through how he worked through it and decided, yeah, I can't. And so this is how I transition. And just hearing people's, honestly, to me, it was so inspiring just to hear people's survival stories of like, it takes a lot to get through some of that stuff. And they were able to do it. So like, I wake up in the morning and it's like, I may not want to do X, Y, and Z. He's like, I'm not going to complain about this because it could be worse. And I've heard worse.
And that goes back to your point earlier about thinking about the big picture, because I think one of the problems with policymaking is that we tend to think of people as monolithic.
Yep. Yeah. And I think the easy answer to that even is just like, you know, perfect example. I take my kids to vote. In every election I have voted in since they were born, literally since they were born. And like, I remember having my son in a Bjorn carrier in November 2010. And I remember I took him to vote in November 2012, and I let him color the arrow for Obama. So in California, you can color a bubble or an arrow, and he colored the arrow. And that to me was just like, I will die loving that moment, because I let my little black boy color an arrow to elect a black president. And a lot of it is just like, how do you teach people and demonstrate to them in real life? Sometimes it's just modeling behavior you want to see, and you don't have to say anything. And that to me is a large part of it. And the reason why I even feel that way and do that is because I saw my parents do it. They took me to vote. They didn't say, oh, hey, look, we're voting. It was just, no, this is a normal thing that we do. We do it because people fought for it. And this, you have to do it, and this is important. And so I, model that behavior for my kids. And it was funny because my son was really upset because I had to vote early to plan for a trip. And so I was like, oh, well, I went without you. And he was like, you went without me? I was like, yes. And he's like, but did you at least vote for Warren? And so his candidate from the gate was Kamala. And he listened to everything she said. He read, like, I don't know. I have a weird kid, a weird in a good way, but he would get on Google and read people's policy statements and what they thought about it. And he was like, I want Kamala. And I was like, okay, great. I do too. And then when she dropped out, he's like, okay, so we're going to Warren, right? And I was like, who is we? And he's like, well, I can't vote yet. And I was like, right. But his thing is like, nah, we doing this together. So I just love the fact that, they're involved and they're aware, and it could be worse. He gave his dad grief. Apparently, I wasn't there, but daddy voted for Biden. He was like, how could you? And I was like, okay, I'm going to log off now. So you got it. But yeah, I don't know. Did that even answer your question? I just went off a whole tangent, but I was just like so passionate about the fact that, like, I love to see how engaged all of us are for this cycle, because it's so important.
Super important.
And yeah, it's so important. And I want people to just get over, your person didn't win. Okay, move on.
Yeah.
I voted for Warren.
Yeah.
She definitely didn't win.
She should have won.
I'm moving on.
Whatever.
Like, you have to move on. Like, you can't. Like it can't be something where you're like, oh, Bernie or bust. Okay, well then bust. We saw how that went 4 years ago. You want to do that again? I don't. I mean, if you do, that's cool, I guess. But no, that's not what you should be doing.
Biden seems kind of crotchety to me. I don't know. He seems like
honestly, I like Biden a lot. Yeah. But I have concerns. I mean, and I was talking to my mom about this. It kind of in the abstract is that I asked her because I was like, oh, she sent me a little picture of her sticker and was like, I voted. And I was like, great. Did you vote for Biden? And she was like, yes, with the shrug emoji. And I was like, okay. I mean, that's on brand for you. That's on brand for 69-year-old Black woman. I got it. But for me, I'm like, but this doesn't look familiar. And she didn't respond to that. And I say that because my grandmother had Alzheimer's. So some of the stuff he's saying and the way he says it, and even the timing in which he says it. So there's something when you have Alzheimer's, it's called sundowners. And it's literally around 5:30 when the sun goes down, they get loopier. And they make more mistakes and they can't find their words more and they get angry. And I just am like, you don't see any of this?
Yeah, my dad had it.
Yeah. So you know what it looks like. And I'm like, this doesn't look somewhat familiar to you.
He said that he was running for Senate.
Yeah, when he said, yes, I'm running for, and I get that I can't say, for certain because I don't work for the campaign, but I know that they've been making a play off of that. Like, oh, it's just the thing he says. And he's like, ha, because he's been running for Senate. He was in the Senate for like 30 plus years. And I'm like, yeah, but he was vice president for 8 years after that. And so, and then when he was like, yeah, if you don't like me, vote for the other Biden. Like, huh?
Right.
What other Biden? Hunter?
Yeah.
The one in the back of the strip club? Like that one?
With Ukraine?
Right. I ain't even gonna go to get right. And then he was doing some stuff in the back of the strip club, according to that news report. And I'm just mind my business because I had nothing to do with that. But my thing is like, if you don't think Donald Trump is doing all the oppo on you and your son, and even your dad's son, which is horrible, but I don't put it past him because he is not a person with scruples.
No.
And then he's going to use all of that. And then he's going to talk about how he thinks your health is doing. Like, if you are not prepared for that, you're not prepared for this run.
Maybe he'll start talking about it first.
I hope he does. And I hope he tries to dispel some of it, because if you don't, they're going to get in front of it before you, and it's just going to be a hot mess.
Because Trump's not exactly mentally there either. So hopefully.
He is not at all. He is very clearly on something, doing something. Not well, but he's doing it. So, I mean, I don't know. But that looks like something I wouldn't want to be a part of. But that's just me.
Well, thanks for joining us, Bärí. As a small business owner, I mean, this has been a great conversation. Also been great to talk to you about politics. I don't usually talk a lot of politics on this podcast, so it's been different and interesting. And I myself, as a small business owner, have to weigh that huge trade-off between not having a traditional 401k or having one through a large employer. So it's good to know small business owners like myself have some additional options through human interest. And of course, congrats on your book. I'm looking forward to that.
Yay.
March 31st, right?
March 31st.
And you can find that on Amazon. What are some final ideas you'd like to leave with us before we close? And where can we find you online?
You can find me online on Twitter. I'm always running my mouth on Twitter, which is where you found me. So it's at Bärí A Williams. just all one word, Bärí A, And one final thing I would say, just everybody respect and love yourself. 2020 is hard. 2019 was terrible, but this ain't looking that much better. And we just got into the first week of March. And one thing that continues to stick with me and has stuck with me since my freshman year of college, and my grandmother said to me, is expect what you accept. And so however people treat you and you allow them to treat you is what they will continue to do. So expect what you accept. And if you don't change that expectation, you cannot change what it is that you will be having to accept.
Bärí Williams is head of legal at Human Interest and author of the new book entitled Diversity in the Workplace, Eye-Opening Interviews to Jumpstart Conversations About Identity, Privilege, and Bias. And again, you can find that on Amazon, and it'll be available. Is it available for pre-order, or is it just released on?
It is.
Okay,
yes,
good. So it's available
for pre-order. We want all the pre-orders.
Bärí, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
And that concludes episode 221 of the podcast. Thanks for listening. If you like what we do, we'd love to hear from you. Please take a moment to head over to Apple Podcasts, give it a review. It helps others know what they can expect from the show and really helps us out. March 25th, RSVP now at washingtech.com/TechConverge2020. It's our inaugural conference here in Washington on NYU's DC campus. Don't go to New York for this. Again, RSVP at washingtech.com/TechConverge2020. We'd love to see you there. Again, on March 25th. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you back here next week. Take care.